Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. For the next 45 minutes, we're going to have a discussion with Matt Rappaport. Now, Matt is a financial advisor with the Swiss bank UBS, and he works out of Austin, Texas office, helping successful individuals in and out of Austin to help them manage their wealth. Matt has counseled clients ranging from newlyweds just starting their careers to professional athletes and even lottery jackpot winners. So Matt ensures that his clients have a complete financial plan, well beyond just their investments. We're going to talk to Matt today on important financial spring cleaning that can help our viewers get their financial house in order. So Matt, welcome, and tell us, where do we start?
Well, Jeanette, who's ready for some financial spring cleaning? Today, what we'll do is we'll go over 3 straightforward actions that everyone can take to feel good knocking out as part of this financial spring cleaning. The first thing we'll do is we'll talk about checking your credit report, and we'll also talk about handling your estate planning, and then we'll also talk about reviewing your life insurance. And for each of these items, we'll talk about the specific action items to take, and we'll have some related discussion. How's that for a start?
That's a great plan. Okay, so checking our credit, what do we need to know specifically about how to do that properly?
Well, did you know that the federal government provides a totally free website where you can check your credit report? It's the website annualcreditreport.com. And it's not a commercial site at all. This is just a federally mandated site that allows you to check your credit report for free every 12 months. And once you go online, you'll see your credit report, which lists all of your mortgages, lines of credit, and credit cards, and make sure everything that you see there is accurate. If you see any inaccuracies, of course, there's information on how you can update that information. So I wanted to start out with something very straightforward that everyone can take care of. I actually did this myself just a few days ago. Just go to annualcreditreport.com and check your credit report.
Okay, fair enough. That is straightforward. Now, we know the website, where to go, and the process to undergo that. You also mentioned to me estate planning. And in researching to prepare for our talk today, I learned that over 50% of the U.S., they don't even have a will, or perhaps even the will is out of date, because we know our lives change, our lifestyles change, our responsibilities. So will out of date is probably fairly common. So that means that a majority of the public does not have the proper estate planning in place. So for our viewers who do not know this fact, without a will in place, state law determines the dispensation of your estate, of your hard-earned assets. And I know, sadly, from personal experience, the outcome when a loved one dies without a will. That is one reason I'm very passionate about getting this information out to our clients, our friends, and our colleagues. I strongly believe having these affairs in order, your will and your estate planning, is the most meaningful gift you can give to your family. And I know you agree with me, Matt. I also know this might feel overwhelming to some people. So can you help us to understand, how do we approach this?
Absolutely. And you're right, this is a really important topic. So just to kind of set the table, let's talk about what all is involved with estate planning. Because most often when we say those words, we think about wills and setting beneficiaries on accounts. And that is certainly part of it. But there's also a lot more that can go into estate planning, like setting up medical directives or establishing instructions for guardianship of minor children. For some estate plans, it may require setting up trusts or planning for philanthropic donations. All this together is what's referred to as estate planning. And Jeanette, you're absolutely right. Getting these kind of documents in order ahead of time is a tremendous gift to your family. And one of the major objectives with providing estate planning is easing the burden for your loved ones. So in kind of that vein, I wanted to talk about some of the things we don't always think about. We think about providing beneficiary bequests and property transfers, but with the medical directives, for example, with a proper estate plan, you can establish answers to questions like, Who would you like to make medical decisions for you if you can't make them? Who would you like to have access to your medical records? Or even what are your desires in a medical emergency? And these are all helpful to your your family when they have to make decisions and they would otherwise not know what your wishes are. One other logistical issue is also helpful to your loved ones is to make sure that you have records of your logins and passwords and important relationships, just so that they can have access if they need to. And another important thing is access to these, right? If you have phones or other computers or devices that you want to make sure your family members are able to access, make sure that you have instruction in place to do that. So that's kind of the overview. The other parts I talk about as to why this is so important to update as part of our financial spring cleaning is, as you mentioned, life changes. And we want to make sure periodically that our estate plan matches our wishes. And it's good practice to do this every few years. I'd especially mention that I've helped clients to try to think of this after they have the life change of moving. You know, they've got a new residence in a new state. That's a good point to start taking a look at what your estate plan was. It was created in another state. I'm not saying that that means your old estate plan is out of date or ineffective. It's just that there could be changes between the state, and that's a good reason to perhaps update with the attorney. So kind of bringing this together, if you want to take a look at what action item 2 is for our financial spring cleaning, we need to take a look at our existing estate planning documents, make sure that they match our wishes, and if necessary, talk to an estate planning attorney. I maintain relationships with a lot of estate planning attorneys. I'm happy to make introductions to any of our viewers if they'd like that, but that's it. Step 2, check your estate plan, reach out to an attorney if you need to update.
Excellent. Thank you. So it seems like a lot of this we actually could do while we're here sheltering in place at home. And perhaps if you did connect someone with an estate planning attorney, they could even start that process virtually. I know from a personal perspective, when we started all this and I was looking for things to do around the house, one of the things that I wrote down was to get my account numbers and my logins and all my passwords in order for my personal documents. I have a password list for my work life, and I didn't have one for my personal life. So I created a document where I put all of the information, and I sent that document to my executors so that they would have a copy. It's really the last thing that you want is to have, your family, when they're in a moment of stress or sadness, be trying to rifle through your files to find important financial information. And also, in doing that, I did a review of my life insurance to make sure all was in order, all the documents that I needed, I had a copy of, because, again, needs evolve over the years. So how about reviewing life insurance? You mentioned that as a topic that we would cover, and I know it can be confusing, and I imagine this is a good time to check on that as well.
Right, absolutely. So maybe to start, let's talk about what life insurance is. In concept, life insurance works as a contract where the life insurance company will pay a beneficiary upon the passing of the insured person. Now that sounds really simple, but you're absolutely right, it can be confusing. Now, I don't sell life insurance, but as a financial advisor, I understand it to be a useful part for someone's larger financial plan. And in doing so, I think there are really 2 keys that we should pay attention to for our financial spring cleaning as it concerns life insurance. Let's take this time to evaluate what we're trying to accomplish. That's kind of the first key. And the second key is let's just understand what policies we have in place to get there. And to talk about each of those in turn, let's talk first about life insurance and what you're trying to accomplish with it. This is a good time to evaluate that. Think of it in terms of, would you like to have insurance in place to replace income you pass so that your family still has that money? Would you like to use life insurance in order to cover a liability? Like, for example, paying off a mortgage. Or perhaps would you like life insurance to be there in order to provide money to pay for a future expense, You could think of that like a child's college tuition. Or maybe it's just there as a buffer. You'd like to have the life insurance proceeds there just to provide money for your family as a cushion. That's what I mean is the first key. Just take this time in our financial spring planning to think about what you're trying to achieve. And then the other thing that we do, the second key, is really understanding what we have. And this is where a lot of new clients and potential clients have a lot of questions, because oftentimes life insurance policies are difficult to understand. And it may have been a while since we brushed them off. It could be that you purchased it a long time ago or someone else purchased it for you, and it's just time to refresh. But I'll say there is one other thing that comes up often, and that is a lot of people have employee benefits where they're getting life insurance through their employer, but they're not even sure exactly the details. So that's another thing to kind of evaluate here. Now, one thing I'll say is I'm not suggesting life insurance is for everyone. I'm not suggesting one size fits all. It's just that this is a good time in our financial spring cleaning to take a look at what we have and how it matches up with what we want to achieve. It's just part of that larger financial plan. And I'm happy to help any of our viewers with that. If they'd like to come and have questions, that's a discussion that I've had many times, and I'm happy to help them. And if they need an agent to get more insurance or otherwise, happy to do that too. But that's it. Step 3 in our financial spring cleaning is just review what you're trying to accomplish with life insurance and understand what policies you have in place to get there.
Okay, and so I have another question for you. What advice do you have to kind of help motivate us to take care of these important items? Even though we know we're supposed to do it, it just seems to be, I know in conversations I have just randomly with people, it just seems to be something that people find it difficult to do. And we're all busy. Sometimes these topics can be a bit intimidating. And even, even if you want to have the conversation, you don't know what all is involved. And it can be uncomfortable to think about end of life decisions, to think about life insurance, estate planning. And it's uncomfortable to have those discussions with your family. What can you share with us that might help us along?
That's a great question, Jeanette. I think the best advice is just to start the conversation. Reach out to someone. Reach out to me if you don't know where to start. If you don't want to do it alone, reach out to your financial advisor. If you already have an advisor, reach out to your insurance agent. Talk to your family. Whoever it is, just start the conversation. And one thing that I'll say is that it's important to keep in mind that most of these difficult financial discussions come from a place of love. And because of that, we don't have to be afraid of talking about these things. I'll give some examples of how I've had these kind of difficult discussions to help clients. I was working with a client recently, and the client's 60 years old. She's healthy, but she has some real concerns because she wants to make sure that if she has future medical expenses, that's not going to deplete the money that she would like to see go to charitable causes in her family. Now, that's a really loving conversation, but that's really a difficult conversation to approach. The great thing is, once we started the conversation, we started looking for ways to find solutions. Similarly, another situation, I advise a client for managing a trust for a relative. Now, that relative can no longer care for themselves. So we have to establish a plan for that trust to make sure that the relative's needs are taken care of. And that's a very delicate situation. Of course, is a very loving situation to take care of one's relative. But like all these topics, it can be difficult. So, with all these types of topics, I'd say just starting the conversation is the first step.
Thank you for that. I know in having kind of casual conversations with clients, friends, and again, people of all ages, some people feel that estate planning and life insurance, it really isn't something that they need, that it isn't important for everyone. Can you share with us why that isn't the case?
Well, I'll say no matter where you are in life, thinking about these things every so often and being educated about them, even just to make sure you're all good with it, is empowering. That'd be my answer.
Now, okay, tell me about that. Tell me about feeling empowered, because there's so much to know about finances, about investing. It can all seem quite complex and just difficult to tackle.
Yes, yes, it can. I would say real empowerment is when you're in charge of your finances rather than your finances being in charge of you.
Mhm.
What this all comes back to is being educated to the point where you can feel empowered. And I say this because a lot of my new clients and potential clients have all these really, really great questions. And they've never had them answered. And so I see my role as a financial advisor act in times as an educator so that clients can have that complete view of their financial picture and really understand it. But to your point, the difficulty is we don't have any kind of formal financial education. We, on the other hand, just kind of pick things up. You know, we pick it up from the media, or we're watching TV, or we're having a discussion with our neighbor, our colleague, our friends, our family, and we get this information, and there's so much conflicting information out there. And so it's hard to kind of make sense of it all. So in order to get this feeling of being empowered and being in charge of your finances, I think it begins with education. And, you know, for my clients, what I make sure I do is I make sure that they're educated with the questions they have and talking about their specifics, but also that the resources are available for them and their family. And that's one of the things that through UBS I'm able to do is I have a whole online curriculum that fills that gap and provides answers to questions from folks who are adults all the way through to their children or grandchildren, school age questions like, what's a savings account? How's a mortgage work? Just providing those basics. So back to kind of basically answering your question, the empowerment begins with education.
I love so much about what you just said here. I took a couple of notes. I completely agree with you. The lack of education in our school systems, it's scary. And I think a lot of even parents don't know how to direct, how to educate their children. That would be a wonderful thing to see added to any course curriculum. You also talked about the UBS curriculum, which I think is fantastic. Gosh, I would love, you know, that would almost be like a mission to get that out to more people. Really, you know, you can change lives by that type of exposure and education. There was something else that you said that I think really bears repeating. You said real empowerment is achieved when you're in charge of your finances, and your finances are not in charge of you. I think that is incredibly powerful. I hope everyone wrote that down, because I think that's almost like something that needs to be on your bathroom mirror, your vision boards, or, you know, that's an inspirational quote if I've ever heard one. So changing topics just a little bit. These days, sadly, a lot of people are leaving jobs as a result of the pandemic. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. When we have a retirement account with a previous employer, I think you mentioned life insurance is often maybe a perk, but also people have retirement accounts, and when they leave that job, they don't know what to do with that account. And I suspect that's something that comes up quite a bit.
You're right. You're right. This is an important topic. Many employers do provide that benefit to their employees. And, you know, you've probably heard 401k accounts, there are pension plans you may have through your employer. 457 plan is another type of employer retirement account, 403b. All of these are perks. And when you have a retirement account through an employer and you leave that employer, you really have four options. The first one is you can just leave it with your old employer. The second one is you can roll the funds over into an individual retirement account, an IRA. The third option is you can roll the funds over if you have a new employer that has an employee retirement account from your old employer to your new employer. And the fourth option, just provide for completeness, is you could cash out the money in your retirement account. Let's go through each of those four, because those are the four options. The first option is you could just leave your funds in your old employer's retirement account. The issue there is you're going to be subject to their rules for as long as you leave it there. Their rules will include what you can invest your funds in and what the costs are to you. A lot of people are surprised to find that there is actually a cost to them associated with their employee retirement account, like the 401k. They just don't know it because it's not an out-of-pocket cost. But that's the first option. Just leave it. The second option, roll it over to an individual retirement account, an IRA. An IRA is simply a retirement account that is not associated with any specific employer. And so the benefit is if you move the funds to your IRA, you can choose what to do with them. You can invest them yourself. There are no restrictions. You can hire someone like me to manage them. It's completely up to you. The third option is if your new employer lets you, you can roll over your funds from your old employer's account to your new employer's account. Again, you're just subject to whatever the rules are of your new employer for that retirement account. And the last option is you can always take the funds out of your retirement account. Now, you may have heard a lot about the new breaks that the IRS is giving us because of COVID. And if you're affected, it's true. There's no longer the same penalty for taking funds out of your retirement account, but that does not by any means make it something that I would widely advise people to do. You really should talk to your advisor before you do that kind of thing, because it is generally not advisable, even though there may be less of a penalty. There are other ramifications. But those are the four options. The one thing I'd kind of say on this topic that happens often is these accounts get orphaned when people move on from one employer to another and they kind of forget about it. And the problem is oftentimes no one's paying attention to what you're invested in or if you're invested or what your costs are. So that's something that I deal with a lot. And I'm happy to help people. If they have any specific questions, our viewers are welcome to reach out to me because I do deal with this situation and happy to hear their particulars.
Thank you for that. I guess circling back to something that you said about just leaving the retirement account at your old employer, if that employer closed, is your retirement in jeopardy? The money that you've left there?
Generally, no, it's not. You usually have an opportunity. Of course, things change in your specific situation. If you're dealing with a pension plan, that's very different. And that's why it's important to really follow up with any particulars so that we can assess what the risks are. Because in some cases, that may be a consideration. It's just that pension plans aren't as common now as they once were.
Right. Okay. And of course, if you did cash it out, although there's no penalty, you're really stealing your future because that's your retirement money and you don't get a chance to enjoy compound interest if you're starting over again from scratch.
You got it.
Great. Okay. So looping back, let's see, on our original list of topics, do you have a kind of a comprehensive checklist for clients to help them with the financial spring cleaning items that we covered?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to share that checklist with them and they can reach out. You can always reach me by email or by phone. My email is matt.rappaport@ubs.com. My phone number, 512-542-7507. That's my direct line, and you're welcome to reach out either way. Happy to provide that.
And I think at the end, we're going to have a screenshot of your information too, if you didn't get a chance to write that down. So let's close with your perspective on investing. And I think after this, we're going to answer a couple of questions that have come in. So investing, the market. What are you seeing? Should we be buying? You're probably so tired of hearing these questions. So I'm sure everyone asks you to have a crystal ball, but should we be buying? Should we be selling? We hear about all kinds of companies that are getting hard, different industries from airlines to cruise lines to ride shares. And then we hear about other sectors that are doing phenomenally well during this crisis. How do we know what to do?
Well, Jeanette, the answer is really straightforward. Everyone needs a plan. Whether you're buying, whether you're selling, and what you own is 100% determined by your specific needs. And that's why you need a plan. Going at it alone, trying to guess the market directions and picking stocks along the way, that's not a viable plan. So what I instead do is I try to help clients get this customized financial plan to help them to achieve their specific goals. And that has to be the first step, because if I don't know what you're trying to achieve, I can't make appropriate recommendations on investing. So you can see from my perspective, finding investments to achieve my client's specific goals is a means to an end. It's not the focus. And that's in part because I provide value by giving advice. I don't have products to sell, which can be very different than the relationship some people imagine they have with a financial advisor. But I will say this, no matter what the times, it does stand the test of time to stress that the value of diversification across investments does hold true. Diversified investments are something that are appropriate for most every investor.
Okay, so given that, what other assets can you recommend adding to your portfolio? Real estate, perhaps, as a thought. As you're aware, and probably much of the audience, I've been selling real estate in Austin for 19 years. And what I always like to say is that agents really must earn a seat at the table alongside our clients' financial advisors. As real estate consultants, we are well aware that a large portion of our clients' wealth is tied up in their homes. And I believe that preserving the equity of a primary home or even a vacation home in making wise real estate investments is part of a solid and a diversified portfolio. And I think any savvy agent should be knowledgeable to kind of earn that seat at the table alongside the client's advisors to be able to have real estate be a part of the overall portfolio. So can you share your thoughts on that point?
Absolutely. You know I love real estate, Jeanette, and you and your agents have helped me purchase several investment properties. Because you're right when you say no matter what, people need somewhere to live. Food, shelter, clothing, these are the basics. They're not going out of style. So real estate can absolutely be part of your financial plan. And like I tell my clients, it's always important to have a trusted guide when you're going through an area that is an important journey. And I wanted to say thank you to you, Jeanette. Thank you for being that trusted advisor to me, because I know how essential it is to have someone to help navigate the real estate landscape, especially here in Austin. That's kind of my thought on real estate. And I'm really glad to have joined today, and I look forward to connecting more with our viewers. It's really been a pleasure being on. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time, Matt. And we're going to open it up to a few questions. We've got a few questions that have come in. In the meantime, there is Matt's contact information so that you can reach out. I mean, a lot of this discussion, as we've said a few times today, is specific to your needs and confidential. So I think we've got a couple questions here, but really to get the sound advice that you deserve, you need to have a one-on-one conversation. Okay, the first question is, how often should we revisit the plans we discussed making today? So how often should you have this financial checkup?
Well, for the first instance, when we talk about checking your credit, it's worthwhile to check that every year. You're allowed to do that through the website. Every single year you ought to, just to feel good about it. With regard to taking a look at your estate planning, whenever you have a major life change, that could be the birth of a child or moving or something else that really impacts you, it's worthwhile to at least consider taking an update. If not, there's a rule of thumb that every few years you ought to anyways. And with life insurance, I'd say it's probably about the same as with estate planning. Part of what you'll have if you have a comprehensive financial plan is meeting with either your advisor who's a financial advisor like me, or maybe you meet with your insurance agent periodically. But it's important to have those relationships where you have a professional who's reminding you to, hey, let's check with this. So it's not transactional in nature, but rather you have someone thinking to help you with these things. I say annual with those kind of meetings.
Okay, fair enough. I think you might have touched on this a little bit earlier, but the question is, well, I think the gist of it is if someone has old documents or an old plan, or simply wants to change advisors, can they just bring you those documents and then you all sit down and look at documents that even you haven't prepared?
Great question. And the answer is yes. That's a great place to start. And the documents tell a lot of the story, sometimes with numbers, and that's certainly part of the equation. The other part is actually just meeting with someone and hearing what their needs are. But those documents absolutely can be brought in, and they're helpful for the quantitative aspect.
While we're on the topic of documents, and I'm assuming maybe your checklist might cover this, but if someone's just getting started, let's say they don't have any old or existing documents, what do they need to bring to you? Or is it more they just need to sit down and have a conversation with you about where their goals are, where they're at now, and where they want to be, and it just starts from more of a consultant conversation, and they don't have to worry about finding or gathering documents to bring to you?
That's a great place to start, simply having the conversation. I think that that's usually the easiest place for me to get a feel for where I can help, if it's a good fit, and to make sure that there's that relationship in place before you spend the time to start investing, because I think that the kind of relationship I look for with clients is one where there's trust and there's a long-term commitment to one another. And you don't have to worry about putting the cart before the horse with finding all these documents if that's going to be troublesome at all. Let's just have the conversation. That's a great place to start.
So one last question. It says, what is the best way for unmarried couples to protect themselves? That's a good one.
Okay, I guess we'd have to get kind of specific on what they're trying to protect from, but there's a number of consultants that I've worked with who are actually specialists in this area to speak with couples who are engaged before they get married in order to have discussions about things that are not just financial in nature, but are just talking about the process of what it is to kind of meld and have the two lives, financially and otherwise, become one. And they do talk about finance. And I actually was helping a couple clients of mine and just made a referral to this recently. So by all means, reach out, and I'm happy to provide that kind of referral to those resources who are expert right at answering that question.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we are running out of time. If we did not get to your question, please reach out to me or Matt, and we'll be happy again to have more of a confidential one-on-one with you. This topic is incredibly important. Please do not leave your finances at risk or your family at risk. Don't hesitate on this. I believe that the past 2 months, I was about to say weeks, but it's been months now, have been a time for us really to reflect and redirect It's important to have time to do this for ourselves and our families. And I think that taking a regular assessment of your goals, of your financial picture, including your position in real estate, is incredibly important for your family, for their well-being, and for the years and years to come. So if anyone needs guidance and sound financial advice, please reach out to Matt Rappaport at UPS. His contact information you see here below. Please reach out to him, and of course me if anyone needs any information on real estate. But again, start the conversation. This is fun, like to think about your future. Start your vision, have that conversation with your loved ones, with your partner, your significant other, your spouse, and where you want to be. This is exciting. This should be an exciting conversation and not one that people are afraid to have. And then the next conversation you need to have is with Matt, to really make sure that your vision becomes a reality. People do it every day. Mike Kevin always says people don't, they fail to plan. He has a better way of saying it than I do, but they just fail to plan. And that is why things don't work out as they should or as they're desired to. So have those conversations with yourselves. Call Matt and get started on securing your future. So thank you again, Matt, and thank you all for your time and consideration. Everybody go out and make it a powerful day. Stay healthy and absolutely be kind. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.